Brought to you by Knights of Awakening. This is the Labyrinth. Today we're going to be hitting on two topics. The first of which will be a nightly topic on truth, and the second of which will be on mysticism, and it will involve astral projection, more specifically how to better yourself at astral projection, what you should expect and what you shouldn't expect. And the reason I'm going to hit these two topics instead of doing just one for this show, we've had a lot of people say they would like to see more nightly content from the Labyrinth. They love it when I do a take on what it means to be a knight. And a lot of people have said that they would like to see more in the higher end mystical understandings or help with certain specific questions. We actually had a viewer write in wanting to know more about astral projection. So here it is. We're going to have a little bit of both. And I think we're going to have a good topic, and it's going to let me go a little bit of a faster pace so that I don't make this drag on too long. So the first topic is truth. And the first thing we have to understand is this is about existing in a state of truth. And most people don't know what truth is. They know what facts are, but they don't know what truth is. And truth is when we pare away misconceptions, ideas that don't really hold value or are not real. When we get to the core of what it means to be who we are and what we do. And the biggest part of existing in a state of truth has to do with self-awareness. Self-awareness is where you take a look inward into the self and you cut it with the knife of truth to cut away falsehoods, to cut away things that are not true of who you are. And in that, a lot of times we do that, we don't necessarily like what we see. So we've got to be ready with that to make changes to who we are, to better ourselves, to better the world around us. If you do not like the world that you see, change it. If you do not like who you are, change it. And there are limits to how much we can change and what we can do. To quote a fellow knight, my body may not be that strong anymore, but my soul still burns with the fire of 1,000 suns. And I think that's an important quote. If, that knight would like to own up to that quote, they're welcome to in the comments section. But I think it really shows the concept of truth. You realize some things you can't change. While I would definitely be a heavyweight boxer, I doubt I would be a heavyweight boxer at this point in my life. I still have a love of the sport, and I may get back into it. As, time permits, as my business takes off, when I do get free time, I may invest time back into it again. But for right now, I'm focusing on who I am, what I do. And that is a truth. And I don't approach it with any sadness. If I had any sadness there, then I would consider changing that truth. But it's a good, firm example of the truth. At the same time, big man with a machete chop really hard. So it's not like I'm where I was a few years back. And I'm sure you've seen that evolution where I was very worried about whether or not I could handle myself in self-defense. I learned a lot. And I learned that a lot of self-defense is the will to actually strike another person or to do harm to them. And that's really another aspect of truth. Most of us are not really aware of who we are, of what we will and won't do in a situation. And it leaves us at limits as to what we can do. Now, a lot of people put on a very good show about who they want you to think they are. A lot of people put on an amazing display of how much they know, or, what they can do, or what they think they can do, or what they think they know. And these people usually play on personality, and they're not looking at the truth of the self. Truth is such a damaging light. It burns away what we want to see and leaves what is really there, and it's often not as grand as we would think, and sometimes it's better than we could imagine. So truth is such an important thing in that. You also need to exist in a state of truth with an awareness of the world around you. And that's very difficult for most people because we don't want to look at our lives and shine the light of truth on them, positive and negative. We look at our lives and we often either make them better than they are. We say, this is so amazing and it's so great. Or we look at them and say, oh, it's so terrible. If you're watching this video right now, you might even be homeless, but your life is better than some homeless people's. You might not have a lot to your name, but you've got more than a lot of people do. And that is truth. That is awareness of the world around you and looking at it without the clogging of the mind and of its rants and its raves, without the falsehoods that we inject into our daily life to either feel better or worse about ourselves. And some people do have to feel worse about themselves before they make improvement and change, where what they really need is a truthful awareness of their life so that they can address it and then take real stock and inventory as to what they can and can't do. With looking in the self and applying that blade of truth to the self, you must be harsh but merciful in your self-criticism. You must definitely be harsh, but you must also recognize some degree of mercy in that, because if all you're going to do is destroy yourself, that's not truth. It's just a lie that is very bright and shiny. It is not the true light of truth. The true light of truth takes stock of personal strengths and personal weaknesses, and it evaluates how those strengths and weaknesses have led you to where you're at and what you can do about changing the weaknesses and exemplifying the strengths in a way that allows you to improve you. That is very hard for most people as well. No one wants to apply a true analysis of their strengths and weaknesses. Everybody can beat Hulk Hogan and the Terminator. Well, yeah, now maybe as you know, old as the movie stars who play those characters have gotten, it might be true, although I wouldn't want to test that personally, because they still look like they're in pretty good shape. It'd definitely be a run for my money, at best for me. But, you know, everyone can beat up Hulk Hogan and the Terminator, and everybody's bench pressed 500, 600, 700 pounds and ran a 4-minute mile, and my God, you hear so much of it. No one wants the real truth. No one wants to hear that, you know, they're out of shape, or that they can't clear their mind, or they can't focus, or they don't put in enough hours training in their metaphysical to do what they need to do. No one wants to hear those things. But sometimes that's what it boils down to. And the other side of that is they don't want to hear the true strengths, you know, that they've never given up, perhaps, or maybe they do put in hours of training. Maybe they have willed themselves past the point most people could get to and just do more than what other people can, and they don't want to hear that, because then they feel like they're being self-aggrandizing. Living within a state of truth is very hard for both sides of the coin, and we all do it. We all think we're Superman, and we all think we're worthless, depending on the day of the week and the week of the month of the year. So living in that state is very difficult, and it's good to meditate on truth and gain an understanding of it. It's a nightly thing, but it's also valuable in mysticism. When you look at the reality of others' lives, you have to have a true view of them. That has to come forth, and you have to see them as complex beings. You have to see that most people are not evil or good. Most people are not truly right or truly wrong in everything they say, and most people come from their perspective only. Very few people get outside of their own head, and it's very hard to do. I don't do it all the time, that's for sure. I try to do it more often. I'd say being in a professional setting where I have to help a lot of people, it has become very important for me to get outside of my head and to get outside of my own mind and my view of the world, because I can't help someone else until I can see the problem that they're dealing with as a living being. So with that, you also have to be aware of one last thing, and that's change and stagnation in the world around you. Living in the truth is recognizing where things are changing, and they must. But it's also recognizing where things need to change. It's also recognizing where things don't need to change but are, or where things need to stay as they are, and that they don't need changed. And these are hard things to look at. This is not easy, because we all want to change one thing or the other, but we don't ask the impact or what we have to sacrifice. And living in a state of truth is about understanding that, about looking at that, diving into it, and really gaining a true core level understanding of what those things are, of what you must hang on to and what you must let go of. This is very important, both for the knight and the mystic. So therefore for the mystic knight, because without living in this state of truth, you're open to your own deceptions. And this is where we're going to get into the mystical application of this. When you do not live in a state of truth, when you have not drawn from the river of truth, as it were, you will self-sabotage and self-destruct, or you'll self-aggrandize to the point where you'll be totally unrecognizable as a person. You will declare yourself a god among men. You will do all of these things, and then yet, when chaos or turmoil strikes your realm, you will crumble and fall. At the very best, you'll just be a mess. For the mystic and for the knight, we have to go beyond that. We have to look at it all with the state of truth. I am a mere man. I may be one of the better mystics in the world, maybe even one of the best. But I also recognize I have limits, and I have days where I'm stressed out, and I have days where I'm depressed, or where I'm overly happy and joyous. And I know someone out there right now is doing a diagnosis on me for having said that, but I think everyone has those moments. It is important to be aware of all of those things, and to know our mortality, but to also know the greatness that lays within us. Otherwise, we will be knights whose potential has been wasted. That's what it means to exist in a state of truth, is finding your potential, moving beyond limitations, being more than you were yesterday. That sums it up for the truth. And that's kind of the truth of it. So we're going to move on to our second segment, which is Astral Projection. I had someone ask if I had any tips on it. I said, you know what, I'll do it in my next show, either as an add-on or a segment or a whole show devoted. So let's dive into this. What is astral projection first? It is leaving your body, projecting into another plane of existence, which is not as solid as this plane of existence. The astral realm is far less solid, far more malleable. People can fly and shoot laser beams and all manner of things if they have any willpower and training in the astral. Many times they see their bodies differently. Many times they have an astral cord or other such things. And ultimately, going into the astral is kind of a controlled dream state. And it's important that we recognize that it's a controlled dream state. It uses all of the same functions of the mind that deep levels of imaginatory exploration use. It uses all of the same things in the mind that guided meditations and hypnosis use. And it uses all the things in the mind that sleep use. And once we recognize that, we can start to get a better idea of what we can do to better hone our astral projection. The very first thing I want you to do if you're learning astral projection is set realistic expectations first. This is first thing, top of the line. You have got to be realistic at what you're expecting. You are not going to get full out touch first time in, or maybe even 50th time. Lucid states are very rare in this, and lucid is where it feels really real. So if you're getting a projection where you feel that you've kind of left your body but are still tethered, you can still feel the physical body, that can still be a form of astral projection. It means you're still getting out there, especially if things are happening outside your control. This is a good way of telling if you've made it into the astral. Are things happening that are not being decided by you? It's where living in the truth and self-awareness becomes so important, because you can lie yourself into projecting into a mental realm instead of the astral so very easily. So determine first, is it the astral that you're in, and how much sensory do you really need to be there? Most of the practitioners I know never get so deep in that it's super real or more real than here. Almost no one gets to a point where it is as real as here. They either get more real than here, or not as real, or slightly real, or kind of real, or, it varies. For me personally, the initial moments inside the astral are not as real as here, and the longer I'm there, the more detailed, the more real it becomes to me, up until the point that it sits right on the edge of real as in here is, and then can move over to that hyper real, which is rare, again, even for me. Even in shamanic journey, I think getting in that hyper-real state is very, very rare for most people. The next thing you can do, you recognize that you're using your senses to do this. You can do sensory exercises. You can do things like tricking your body into feeling hot or cold through focusing techniques and meditation. You can trick yourself into feeling like you're holding a ball in your hand. There are thousands of sensory exercises you can do to make a difference in your astral projection, and those types of sensory exercises really benefit, because what you're teaching your mind is to take input that is not physical and then transfer that into sensation. And projecting out into the astral, you're still reporting back to your body if you have a memory of it. A lot of people don't like to think about that, but you have brain activity, so you must be reporting back to the body. So the body is recreating those senses in real time for you. So if you learn to trick your senses, then you learn to utilize your senses on other stimuli other than just here and here. So sensory exercises are very, very good for that. In Japan, they call it drinking tea from an empty cup. There's a form of meditation where you sit and you focus on the tea ceremony without any tea in the cup. And since they've done the tea ceremony so often, they can visualize and taste and sense and smell the tea as if that was there. And I swear to you, I just caught a whiff of tea and I haven't had any made up in days. So, yeah, you can do that. And that helps with the projection skills. Another one is empty mind meditations. These are things like Zazen, where you clear the mind out. Another problem people have with astral projection is they're so damn cluttered. How are you going to get over there if you can't get out of here? You're there. It's like being on a busy highway. You've got the cars that are your thoughts piled up in front of you. How can you hope to project? You need to empty that mind. You need to clear that mind out. And that takes a lot. And it takes a while. What a lot of people don't realize is to be good at astral projection, to really get out there, you've got to learn a lot of other skills and use them first. If you can't clear your mind for at least, I don't know, let's give a round number, 30 seconds. 30 full, complete seconds of zero thought. If you can't pull that off, you're not going to have an easy time with astral projection unless you have a unique condition, such as certain types of autism, in which case you might find astral projection wildly easier and it be completely impossible to clear your mind. I have a friend who has that. They can project as well as I can, probably better most days. Yeah, that's just, they can't clear the mind. Like, if they get that full 30 seconds of clarity, they praise their gods. So yeah, empty mind, very important. If you can do that, it will help. If you cannot do that, and you're not having trouble with astral projection, then you really love my shows, and you've listened to this one, and hey, thank you, you know. Another thing is focusing on relaxation exercises. Go take a hot bath or hot shower before projection. Relax, get a massage. You know, do deep breathing exercises, drink chamomile tea, do something to relax that overactive mind of yours, and that'll help some too. If you can calm the body, the mind, it won't always follow, but it might, and it does some. If you can get that mind to follow that body, well, look at that. You're going to be a step closer. Lucid dreaming techniques. Wow, one of my favorites, and I am so crappy at this. I can do it, but I have to set the intent first. You can sit there and you can repeat phrases before you go to sleep, or you can try to watch your awareness while you're falling into sleep and enter a lucid dreaming state. The act of entering lucid dreaming, even once or twice in your life, helps exponentially with astral projection because you know what it is you're aiming for. You're no longer trying to throw a baseball at a target having never thrown a baseball, but instead you're throwing a baseball at a target with a great amount of information as to what it means to throw a baseball. You've done it. So look up lucid dreaming techniques, go through your Google and find all of them that you can and try some of those out. And then after you get decent with lucid dreaming, see if astral projection becomes a little bit easier. Another one is transcended states, or transcendental states. Yeah. Pardon me. I'm not asking you to transcend all of reality today on this episode. Eventually we will. Instead, transcendental states are all about entering a state between points in the mind. And with that, open-eyed meditations are very good for this. This is where you do your classical breathing meditations, but you keep the eyes open and focused in front of you until your sight shifts and changes and your awareness starts to change with it. You can actually feel the brain shifting gears during this. And these shifts in transcendental states they're half of the equation for astral projection. If you can do it with your eyes open, it becomes easier to do it with your eyes closed. Energy work. Wow. Didn't see this one coming. Everything I've ever said about energy work applies to this. The better you are with energy work, the better you are at focusing. The better you are at moving the energy body, and therefore the better you are at projecting in other planes. Don't think of it as up, but think of it as through points in time. Think of it as walls that separate points of reality, and you're crossing through those walls. You'll even feel a bit of a click to it when doing that. But with energy work, you're building up the focus and the raw levels of energy to project more easily. And some people project with the catapult method. I have been known to project with the catapult method, where you build up so much energy that you pop over. For some people, that's what they need. Mental focus training. Mental focus training is exceptionally valuable in this, and it's things like holding a thought in the mind for a period of time, holding an image in the mind, doing math equations in your head, anything that forces the mind to focus its intensity towards a single thing will be beneficial to astral travel, because you're used to forcing yourself to do that which you have not done, or that which is uncomfortable. Mental focus training, there are thousands of things you can find online. Look up mind games, though. Look up games that hone the mind. This is a mental muscle, and it's one worth training. So how does this fit into the Norse equation? You're a Norse. What's this got to do with anything being Norse? It really does, because it relates to shamanism and the journeys that are taken in that, and the journeys potentially that Odin took. If we were to read the stories and take them from a certain point of view, it seems that he may have been the greatest projector through planes in those stories. And in that, this is a core technique of shamanic practices, and therefore Norse shamanism. It's integral to doing the work. Anyone who can't project probably can't do the shamanic work as deeply or as detailed as they'd like, because they can't journey to the other sides. They can't journey to the other realms to gain information or to confront things. That's core level shamanism in every culture since the beginning of time. If you don't see the importance of that for a Norseman, I don't know what to tell you, honestly. I mean, maybe you're at the wrong show. So with that, we've covered a lot. We covered the truth in mysticism. We've covered the truth from a nightly standpoint. We've covered the value of it across the board, and we've covered astral projection. And I think the truth has a lot to do with astral projection. I think that awareness, especially setting the realistic expectations first, is very, very, very hyper important. 3 varies and a hyper. You know I'm serious now. Because if you are not setting those realistic expectations, then every time you do not achieve this massive increase in your ability to astral project, and instead you get the minor victories, you're never going to be satisfied or happy, and you're going to stop making progress. I don't think anyone wants that. So, as always, I want to thank you all, for joining me here, for giving me your time. Like, share, and subscribe if you like the video. If you don't, feel free to launch complaints and post dislikes. I actually had someone come up and they said they couldn't understand what I was talking about. I invited them to ask what it was they needed me to explain more on. I know I use a lot of big words sometimes. I know that since I know it, sometimes my explanations are not at the level that everyone else gets. But that person removed their comments shortly after. So if you got concerns, don't be that person and remove those concerns. Voice them. If you don't understand something, let us know. I'll do a follow-up show, or I'll do an article, or I'll do an article with a follow-up show. I'll do a follow-up article show where you can watch me write the article, and then I'll post it. Well, something like that. I'll do something to address it, though. If I don't see it, okay, Justin will see it, and Justin will be like, "Hey, you got people talking," and I'll be like, "Oh, really? Wait, good or bad this time?" So, hit us up with what you think. Again, any questions? I'm always more than glad to answer people's questions on this kind of thing. Thank you so very much for your time. And remember, awaken the night within.